Alrighty, hello. Can everyone see us? I think we're live now. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties there. I think folks can see us. Yeah, all right. Oh, hey, Andrew, how's it going? Alrighty. I'm just gonna give it. I think let's just see. I think most folks are here, so I think we'll kind of get started. Alrighty. Well, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. There's quite a few folks already in attendance. We're gonna kind of I'm here to kind of talk about I guess a pretty large and vague topic, but what I'm kind of calling great product management foundations and kind of trying to do it from the start or at least as early as possible. This is really going to be more of a conversational deck rather than one that's got full of frameworks. If you've seen one of my presentations before, you know that I love my frameworks. But this one's going to be more conversational. And really, it's kind of more of a compilation, actually, of a bit of my past decade in my career, and especially the past 5 years where I really focused on building out product teams at high growth startups. I found that I've typically joined companies around the 50 to 70 person mark, and I'm usually almost always the second or third product hire on kind of the leadership team. And really what I've found, especially in the past year during the pandemic, is I've had a lot of virtual conversations with product managers that kind of have this precarious position where they're one of the first PMs in their company. And so some of the topics that we'll go through actually can be like presentations of their own. So we'll be staying pretty high level. But I just want to go through a bit of housekeeping, kind of go through, what this talk's going to be about. Have a little poll here that I'll kind of kick off. But to start with, who's this for? Who's this talk for? Really, if you're a product manager in a high growth startup, kind of anywhere from 0 to 200 employees, I think most startups are hoping for high growth. So if you're in that space, I think this will be useful for you. If you're one of the first few PMs at your company, kind of regardless of size, I think it'll be useful. And then if you're maybe at a company where there's really a lack of product management, you've kind of joined them to bring it up, or maybe there's an infancy to product management. Or if, this last one, which I know maybe a lot of folks feel like it, if you feel like your company's just doing product management wrong, maybe this might help, course correct a few things. So to quickly kind of kick it off, I'd love to know, just like in 10 seconds, just a single poll of who are we, like who's in attendance, how many product managers do we have, how many product owners, product designers and product marketers, any project managers or business analysts, or maybe software developers and QA founders and maybe others. So let me kick that off. Everyone should see that. I'm only going to leave it open for 10 seconds. So give me 1 second. Here we go. So everyone should be able to see the poll, and I'm going to end it in about, I think most folks have had some time to see the poll. If you can't, it should be live. Maybe someone on the chat side can just maybe reply if they can see the poll or not. It looks like it's open to me. All right, I'm going to close the poll now, see what happens here. The good news is this is the only poll that we have for the sessions. So here we go. And look at that. Okay, so we got some good answers here. I think most folks can see it. So yeah, about 55% are product managers. Got 10% of product owners, and then some project managers and VAs. Only one founder in attendance. I've always found that to be a little bit higher, but and then 11 others. So yeah, I mean, I expected that the mix would be basically kind of product management and product ownership. One of the things I do like kicking off of why I did the poll is I always kind of give this disclaimer in most of the presentations I do, just a bit of an elephant in the room. To me and for this deck's purpose and the slides and the presentation that we're going to go through, product management and product ownership are one and the same thing to me. And really, if you're kind of doing a partial part of this role where, maybe you're not doing the full spectrum of product management, where you're taking ideas, going through that ideation stage and doing some discovery and hopefully validating those ideas before you go and build them. And then, of course, analyze how that feature or product is doing in the market. This presentation kind of assumes that you're trying to get there or that you do it already. So, and the other thing I do want to call out is that the amount of experience that you come with or have obviously helps with your confidence when you're trying to build up product management principles at your company, and of course your credibility. But what I find is that you're often one of the first PM hires at these companies, especially as a startup, and you're not always a leadership hire. And so you may actually be pretty early on in your own career. So hopefully this deck will give you a little bit more, of a mindset to kind of go into this pretty interesting journey that I find a lot of product managers go into, especially more junior product managers, because they're trying to, get a crack into the door of the world of product management. So what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Well, what I have found in this mix is that, it is extremely difficult if you're starting a new product, if you're starting a new company, to find your first few early adopters and start to find product market fit. It really is extremely hard. And what I find is once you've found a bit of that mix where you have some early adopters, you start getting some customers on board, it actually typically feels like it's pretty easy to build product for a little while. You have a development team, you kind of go through iterations and you're just driving through customer feedback. And, that's not a very painful thing to go through. You have so many, customer input and feedback coming in, and more customers coming on your product. And you already know that you want to do a bunch of things. You've just started the progress and the journey, that there's a lot to do. And so you're not really struggling. But once you start to scale, let's say you've started hiring more developers, you've got quite a few customers now in the door, and you have a couple of dev teams now. Now, typically the next PM's joining to kind of help lead one of these teams. And that's when it becomes really difficult again to drive value. It becomes really hard to figure out, what the heck to do next now that all these other things that we've wanted to do are kind of complete. And often the CEO, the CTO, or CPO, or your founder mix don't have the time to kind of share and ensure that vision is coming to fruition, because so much is going on at that scaling moment. And I really think that this is the moment in time where if you're joining as a PM, or if it's a startup, or if it's a new product at a larger company, I think it could be easier if you start doing some really hard things early on. So the first thing I can say is, why does it matter? Well, still like 90% of our products and features fail within the first year. And unfortunately, for a lot of us, they often will take a year to build. Hopefully it doesn't, but oftentimes they do. And so the goal, I think, is really to start building great product management foundations kind of from the start. And that start doesn't mean that it has to be a startup. If you feel like some of the things we're going to go through today aren't happening at your company, now, you can start today. I think this goal itself, though, great product management foundations, might be a little vague. So to define it a bit further, I really believe that's to create an environment where you can effectively complete kind of lean product discovery, where you validate ideas really quickly. And we'll talk more about this and kind of how we can kind of get really quick to this point where we start doing product discovery effectively. So a lot of this actually comes from a bit of a survey that a few of us ran on LinkedIn a few months ago, and it was pretty interesting to see the results. We had 3 questions that I'll run you folks through. Number 1 was, how much time are product managers spending on product discovery? And I was kind of shocked to see that most people answered between 10 to 20% of the time. A lot of people answered 0%. I was pretty shocked by this, but some of my colleagues weren't that shocked, actually. And the number that was between 40 to 60% was extremely small. The second thing we asked was, like, do your stakeholders trust your product discovery? And a majority answered no. And then the last thing we kind of asked was time to complete discovery. And again, a lot of folks kind of said no. So the whole point on this and today is really going to be talking a little bit about kind of, some of the hard things that, I think most PMs need to start doing at the start, so that we can get to a place where we drive product discovery. So, why listen to me? My name is Partho. I'm currently the head of product at a company named Banana Tag. pretty exciting news for us. Actually, I know a few of our employees are watching as well. We announced just this week that actually we're merging with another company named Staffbase to create the largest internal communication platform in the world. Really, really exciting news for us, and I'm stoked about it. Still can't get over it. But outside of that, I also am the lead instructor for product management at BrainStation, one of them, I should say. And previous to that, I've, again, worked with a lot of different high-growth startups, whether it was a head of product role or a group product manager role. Most recently, like at companies like Unbounce or MEC. Please do connect with me on Twitter. It's at ProductPartho, or LinkedIn, which is just /ProductPartho. And as I said, for the past 5 years, I've been joining companies around the 50 to 75 person mark to kind of help them grow quickly and help them grow to 200 to 500 employees and kind of lead to different exits or series and fundraisers. The one thing I can say that's always common and true is that scaling is extremely hard, and we'll go through that in this presentation. So a quick agenda of what we're just going to be talking about today is really, number one, the top 5 hard things I think that you can do at the start. Number 2 is kind of what I call, we'll go through a bunch of those, and then we'll dive into 3 topics, especially one that I like calling the Hippo Dilemma, another one kind of on building up your social capital in your company, and then the last one kind of being around your product vision. And then if there's some time, I'm going to give a couple of hot tips that I've found to be pretty useful at the companies that I've helped, and we'll leave some time for Q&A. So to start with, just to kind of level the playing field here, the definition for product management, I think, matters because a lot of folks have different definitions. And so my definition that I always call out is product management really should be the life cycle function of kind of determining what's the next thing, right? What's the right thing to either build, buy, or partner next in a way that really minimizes risk for the entire company. And I truly believe that this is one of the main end goals for product management, is that especially the minimizing risk. If you can validate ideas quickly, then you're probably doing a lot of minimizing of that risk anyways. So the top 5 hard things, in my opinion, to start with, and I don't want to pause on it, but I think before we dive into the hard things, let me just talk about some things that I think are quote unquote easy. Now, please note, like when I say easy, it doesn't mean that it's not going to take a lot of time, that there's not level of effort. The things I'm talking about are things like talking to your customers, understanding or creating your user personas or jobs to be done, understanding like which features are currently being worked on and why, and maybe getting to know your product a bit more and any product teams that are there, and then kind of talking to your key stakeholders. Understanding that your company's objectives and kind of the current strategies really, that's probably the one that's the hardest. Sorry, my dog's going at it. Give me 1 second. I'll just make sure he's okay. He's going to go at it for a little bit. And so, yeah, the number one thing that I'll start with is understanding why you've been hired in your job. This is going to be there we go. Good boy. Understanding why you've been hired and your job that you're coming into. I mean, that's a really huge part. And you would think that this isn't difficult, but what I have found is, as one of the first few PMs, understanding what success looks like for your job is really difficult. Worst of all, like it's nothing like what all the books tell you that it's going to be. And so having conversations early on with whether it's your manager or your founders about what success looks like for you and any KPIs you need to own or where the product should be a year from now, those are things that should happen really quickly, but often they don't. And unfortunately, even when you start asking some of these questions, many folks won't have answers for you because it's too early for them. They haven't even thought about it probably at that point, but they're good questions to ask nonetheless. And what I can say is the root cause is that your job is to really understand your founder's wants and needs at that point. And you're really trying to figure out, what are we trying to do next? And I think the key thing here is I've seen that PMs at this stage are really separated, whether it's from the founders or the general managers, someone that, obviously has an idea of where they're trying to take this thing that you've come to join. And that separation isn't good because it's crucial that you as a product manager understand, the reason the company was created, the initial or current unique value proposition, and the competitive advantage, hopefully, that it has against alternatives. Unfortunately, if you feel that your company doesn't really have a unique value prop or an unfair advantage, you actually might be in a rude awakening because it might be up to you to figure that out. And so the founder's vision for the company and the product and why they built it in the first place. And of course, very importantly, but often missed, the founder's end goals and their wants and what they want to, do in the end. Do they want to, maybe go for a fundraise soon? Do they want to maybe have an exit? Do they want to actually, build a sustainable lifestyle business for a long time? Those are important things to know right away. And there often exists a very difficult conversation at this time, which is really understanding your founder's vision and what they want versus what your customer's current perception of your product is and the value that it's bringing to them. I often kind of call this a product vision gap. Because there's something that your founders are trying to strive to, and probably something else that your customers are thinking your product's going to go and do. And oftentimes that doesn't align, and that gap really, starts to erode and cause confusion in your company. So I think that you really need to start asking hard questions to kind of fill that product vision gap. Ask hard questions of showcasing where your customers are currently at, why they're using the product versus maybe what the founders are wanting them to use it. Really asking some really difficult questions here will probably in turn build a lot of social capital and trust from your founders, which we'll talk a lot more about in a few slides from now. But once you do, and we will talk about this more, is once you do start to build a bit of a vision, you'll start to become ambassadors of that vision and of your founders. And that's a really great place to be. So the second thing that I think is really difficult is kind of talking about the Hippo, right? The Hippo being the highest paid person's opinion. And the sad reality is obviously that most PMs that have been hired at this point are really here to help the founders deliver features. Unfortunately, though, a lot of those features can be sometimes assumed that they'll work in the market. And your focus will often be kind of 90% or even 100% on product delivery and very little in product discovery. And so at some point you'll build a lot of things out there and you'll deliver a lot of things, but you'll probably find out that some things aren't working well. Maybe they weren't that valuable. And then it's kind of when you probably realize that you've been hired really to be more of a yes person, yes man or yes woman. But you also note that as a product manager, your job isn't to be that yes person. It's actually quite opposite. You're there to challenge and ensure that the product's vision is coming to fruition and that we're, placing something in the market that's going to work well. So that can be difficult because product delivery is important, especially at this stage. And ensuring the right thing is being built is probably even more important, especially if you're, at that early stage startup, because the funding is probably not all there. So I think that, filling the gap between that product vision problem that we talked about is really crucial so that this doesn't happen for a long time. And really a challenge should be as quickly as possible to bring good, lean product discovery principles into your department so you can start gaining trust in that system. And really, if pretty quickly within a few months, if you can weed out some failures through really quick experiments and then build only the successful ones, I think you'll build a lot of trust in that system and in your product department and yourself really quickly. So let's just kind of talk a little bit about the product vision, or probably at this time, maybe a lack thereof that exists. As I mentioned, the sooner you can fix that product vision gap, the faster you probably can get to focusing on product discovery. And after you discuss and have really heated debates with your founding group and anyone else that matters about, what is the product vision, it's really important to kind of figure out that gap that your customers and the product vision that your founders want, and fill that pretty quickly. And once you've figured out, where you're going to go as a company, really come together as a group and showcase and really evangelize the new product vision and really over communicate. It's actually really difficult to over communicate your product vision. And honestly, product visions sound easy, but they're not. You're changing the perception of what people want from your product, both internally and externally. And I can say, like at Banana Tag, my current where I'm at right now, it took me months to work with our founders to kind of create 7 simple words, which was really we wanted to become the one-stop shop for internal communication. Um, Once we created this, because of this, every decision we made thereafter really meant that we kind of opened ourselves up to a lot of different directions that we could go for this pretty large product vision that we had. And we probably knew right away that it was so large that maybe we needed some help, whether that was through strategic alliances or maybe, we had to acquire someone or get acquired with someone that shares probably something similar to what we wanted. And we really communicated and kind of evangelized, I think, this product vision for a long time. One of the first things that we did was really kind of put evidence to it. So we tried to build out, decks and have conversations in every town hall that we had of why is this important? Why does it matter? And probably talked about it to death to the point of maybe people were sick of hearing it. But that's not, I don't, hopefully not a bad thing, actually. So once you've kind of figured out that product vision, you've started communicating it, you've come to this company, and obviously there's going to be a lot of things that are on the go and being built out, but you have to make a real quick kind of mandate to yourself of what are you going to focus on first. Are you going to think about product discovery, or are you going to think about product delivery? Because it's going to be really hard to do all the things that a product management department needs to do right away as the first few PMs. You just won't have the time. And so you kind of have to choose one or the other, in my opinion. And almost automatically, I think most of us have probably gone into these kind of companies or anywhere and probably dive right into your backlog of ideas and features that are being built right away. Whether that's your Jira backlog and some kind of team backlog to go and release a set of features, that's probably automatically where all of our minds kind of go to and what we're asked to do. But I think it's actually important to kind of resist this, because I think the thing that we should do is ask, why are we building this thing and what's the evidence that's validated it? And it will be awesome if every single time this question came up, there were answers to it and even answers to any assumptions that were made. But 9 out of 10 times, there's probably no answers to these things. And that's where, if you can just get a little bit of time to do quick discovery, even right away as you join your company, you can build some evidence of maybe why this is a good idea or maybe why it might not be. And by doing that first, I think that you put yourself in a place where you can start to focus on product discovery and get the time to hopefully discover your own ideas. I should say we're going through a lot of info here. I will have time at the end to kind of answer Q&A through the chat, so we will have some time there. The fourth thing I think that's really difficult, of course, as we've been talking about with product discovery or product delivery, is this idea of, well, I have to do delivery. I've been brought on to bring features into the market. I think to do so, you kind of have to figure out of setting up some form of a dual track lane where you're doing discovery and then also doing delivery. And usually that's called dual track agile or dual track scrum. I'm not too concerned about the name, but really you have a small group that's probably going to be validating ideas while your development team is building out the ideas that have had successful experiments. And if you kind of focus on building first right away and only on building and prioritizing things that are in your backlog, I do think that you'll, have a really hard time trying to get back to product discovery quickly. I think it actually takes you a long time until you scale to like 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 PMs that come in before you really get to build a life cycle that focuses on product discovery. And often, because of all the things we read in different product management books, I see a lot of product managers get pretty dissented at this point and kind of leave the company because of that. And that's not great for anybody. So what I think is it's important to call this out very quickly, that you should ask to solve a problem rather than create a solution first, right? If a feature is already underway, which almost 90% of the time it probably is, ask to be given just a little bit of time to do some discovery, rather than continuing solving something that might not work in the market at all. And the last kind of hard thing that I'll kind of call out before we dive into a few of these topics are kind of what I'm going to say product ops or product management inputs. Now, product ops is a pretty new role, and the term itself, maybe coined in the last few years, but really what it entails has been completed by PMs for years. And I think it's important to kind of understand what this role is, or what product ops is trying to entail, so that you have a strategy around it, especially as some of the first few PMs in your company or department. I think determining all the different inputs that are going to come to your product management stack and eventually your roadmap is really a key responsibility for you. And really understanding how to easily review a bunch of information that's coming from customer success, from sales, from marketing, and of course your users will make your life a lot easier. And so I think it's important to call out and ask for a budget, right? Ask for a budget to build a bit of a toolkit and a workflow, especially connecting to different teams and their tooling, and so that you guys can feed information asynchronously both ways. Things like, maybe there's already a business intelligence dashboard. You should probably have access. You start thinking about it from a product landscape. Maybe you want to bring in some product analytics from something like Pendo, Heap, or maybe even something like Full Story or Hotjar, and then connect to those other teams' tools, right? A lot of different teams, like sales might have Salesforce or Gong for win-loss analysis, and customer support will have Zendesk for maybe Intercom for something like that. There's so much important information that lives on those tools that you should be reviewing weekly, but there's so much there so quickly it can be overwhelming. So having a strategy and figuring out a workflow that's going to work for everybody is going to go a long way. And of course, then bring that into a roadmap of some kind. I'm a pretty diehard fan of Product Board. My product management team will know this. So I'll always call that out. But if you're not even using a roadmap tool, if you're just using Excel or some other tool like Miro, just trying to bring some of the evidence that you're getting from all these different tools builds a lot of trust in your system. And if you're trying to do like lean experimentation or A/B testing, something like Optimizely or Unbounce or Google's version of that, it can help a long way as well. The big thing I will call out, though, is with product ops and product management inputs, it's important that you're building up the allies that you have and kind of the trust in the system. Obviously, as product managers, we kind of sit in the middle of a lot of things, and we have all these different stakeholders and their voices that matter. It's important to just understand every key stakeholder relationship attached to your roadmap. And hopefully through the tooling, you can actually start having these conversations as well. And you'll probably find pretty early on that there are some strained relationships, right? Maybe CS has a bunch of bugs that aren't being taken care of, or, a few small improvements that really will make a huge impact and delight in your customer base. It's important to understand all these motivations and bring those voices into your roadmap. And you can usually do that through your tooling. So the other thing, obviously, is make sure you're talking to these different heads of the different departments, whether it's monthly one-on-ones. Honestly, sometimes monthly is too long. I have weekly and bi-weekly one-on-ones with different departments as well. So ensure everyone's voice is heard and that any PM is talking to the different important people that are their main stakeholders. This one I kind of listed as one of the easy things as well, but the tooling side of it is actually really difficult to do pretty quickly. So I'm going to pause here before we dive kind of into three of the topics that I talked about. Any questions that I can answer? I think we're okay on time, that we'll have about 10-ish minutes at least for some Q&A at the end.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we actually have a couple of questions.
All right.
So we'll kind of roll through these time goes, but first one from Mickey Tokola. What do you do if you're market-oriented and the founders are product-oriented?
Market-oriented, is that in terms of marketing-oriented, like more growth-oriented, or more in regards to the actual market? I probably need just a little bit more information on that.
Yeah, I wondered maybe if that was a little bit muddy. If you remember, in the past, we were really driven to be market-driven product managers. We're out in the community talking to customers and partners and prospects and looking at competitors and using that intel to kind of drive, versus these are all the features I need to build in the product. I think
Yeah, no, totally.
I think they're coming from there.
Yeah, I think I mean, I actually think that's not a bad place to be, like, especially because if we're talking about trying to build that discovery, then, things like market research is going to help your case as to what you should go and build. And yeah, obviously product managers used to sit within the marketing departments before it really became more, development oriented. And obviously I think now we're sitting in the middle. So I don't think that's a challenge. I would actually say that that's a strength for your company, that you can actually go. Maybe the big thing is maybe you're separated from the development side a little bit more, and it's probably more about ensuring that you're building the allyship with your development team and your CTO or head of engineering, and giving them the evidence to understand, like, this is why we should be doing these things in a certain way and why this is the priority. Especially from a vision perspective, it's really important to kind of communicate that vision to everybody, but especially your development team and department, so they understand what they're building matters and why. Stuart, any other questions we can answer right now? All right, we'll keep going, but then at the end we will keep some time aside for it. So diving into 3 of the topics, one of them that I'll kind of call out is what I call the Hippo Dilemma. And I have a funny kind of story and joke about this, but this is a site that actually back in 2009, Unbounce, which is a landing page builder, now conversion automation platform, they created an April Fool's joke. It was a website called askahippo.com. And I didn't work at Unbounce at the time, but I remember seeing this site and I loved it. It was such a funny joke, but it hit home for me of what I was going through at the time. And I remember back then that I knew that I wanted to go and work for that company at some point, which I'm humbled to say that I was able to. And what they were really trying to do with this funny joke of askahippo.com was really promote A/B testing. That if you had to speak to a hippo and get their opinions on it, then maybe you can use A/B testing to bring some evidence of why maybe that's not the right thing to do. But what I really want to dive into here is, as some of the first few PMs and maybe even early in your career, the truth is it's hard. It's hard dealing with hippos. It's hard dealing with founders. You're probably not accustomed to it. But the truth is, founders have the right to care a lot about their business. It's their business. It's their baby. They've been working towards it. But you should also know that they're probably not intentionally hiring you to be a yes person. But really, they're probably hiring you to solve problems for customers in ways that work for their business. That's a Marty Kagan quote, by the way. But you kind of have to take the leap of how you're going to deal with different types of stakeholders and hippos. And I think that the best way of going about it is trying to be as delightful as possible. And that way you're going to build influence. You're going to have to go and disagree with the hippo. It's just a part of the job. And sometimes you'll meet some hippos that can't be saved, and you'll have to make the decision of whether to stick it out or move on. But it's important that you, at least as a product manager, bring some evidence to the table of assumptions that are being built. And I love telling this story just because the askahippo.com was one of the funniest things I remember seeing as a joke. And another image here, actually, this is from Product Board. Give them full credit for this, but I think it's funny. The dangerous animals of product management, of course, hippo being one of them. But there's a few others that they call out, like the wolves working on the latest fire, folks that are extremely reactive, only thinking about the here and now and maybe not the vision in the future. The rhinos, the zebras are probably a better one to talk about, like folks that come in with zero evidence but really, really strong on their opinion. As a lot of great product managers will say, strong opinions but loosely held is best. So there's some really great ways of kind of dealing with these different stakeholders that you can find on Product Board's website and the blog. But what I will say is you're going to have to get over the fact that you will have to deal with these kind of stakeholders, but also stand your ground for what's right for your product and the company. And if you're evangelizing the product vision that you set up early on, hopefully with your founders or GMs or whoever it may be, then you're probably going to be in a good place to fight this battle because you're being the voice of your founders and stakeholders. So it's a really key piece, in my opinion. The second thing that we can dive into is kind of what I call social capital, or there's a huge framework around social capital, but isn't talked about that much. I really love talking about social capital because as product managers, we have to build influence and we have to be good at storytelling. But so many PMs don't take the time to kind of figure out how to build social capital in their company. And I don't mean, run a popularity contest. I really mean more, that start to believe in your company's culture and embed yourself in it as much as possible, right? Believe in the values, the norms, try to have that sense of belonging there and build trust with your peers, network with them, and be engaged. And obviously, if you go through all of that, you're going to participate and hopefully you'll start seeing some reciprocal behavior happen back. You really won't believe how far this can go in building trust in yourself and product management in the organization, but also as a great way of building influence. So I don't think a lot of us spend enough time in some of this, and I have seen that in the last 5 years. I've met a lot of PMs actually that probably don't, and it's one of the things that I'll coach through. So I think it's one of those things that we definitely can do a better job of. And the third thing, and the most important thing, and everyone here has probably heard it or seen it, and it's probably been talked about to death, but it's saying no, right? And I think the big thing that I want to put on this is really staying true to your product vision, right? Saying no and thinking about that vision and where you're trying to go with the vision, using that as the guiding principle, which again is why it's so important to have a good vision that's set. And visions can be huge, right? They can be. But there's so many great quotes. I'll go through a few of them. I'm sure most folks have seen all of these already, but Steve Jobs obviously has a bunch of them. People think that focus means saying yes to the things you got to focus on, but really it's about saying no to the 100 other good ideas that come. And innovation is really saying no to 1,000 things. He also has another one that says like focusing is all about saying no, right? We've heard all of these things before as PMs. We dive into this all the time. Another one from Atomic Habits was like, when you say no, you're really only saying no to the one option. But when you do say yes, you're saying no to every other option. And no is a choice, but yes is a responsibility. Awesome quote. The big thing I will call out, though, is that you will have times where you'll have your founders or execs come up with many ideas. And I've had the pleasure of working with multiple different types of founders. And some of them will have an idea a day, and that's okay. That's what made them successful. For you, though, you have to be the person that kind of says, okay, well, bring those to me because I'm going to help validate them, but let's shield the team's time and what they're doing and see which ideas actually go towards the product vision, and then ask back that do we really want to stray from our current direction? And that's really where I think Eric Ries from Lean Startup, where he says like a pivot really can be something that's useful. Obviously, pivoting every day or every week is not great, but a pivot really is more of that change in strategy, but not really a change in vision. And so I think staying true to your product vision, especially when you are saying no, is a key thing. And you just have to remind the folks that are coming to you, all your peers, all your friends, all your different colleagues, that when you say no, you're really just trying to further your product vision. And I know that oftentimes I've been told this by some of the PMs in my company that, when you say no, if the other side reciprocates in a way that they understand and they're totally fine with it and you go on with your day, it means you've done a great job of talking about your vision because that person can understand why you said no really quickly. And I guess on that, a little story from me. I'd be remiss if I didn't add a little slide in regards to what's happened at our company in the last few weeks. But, this week, actually yesterday, we fully announced that we'll be merging Bonantec with our new company staff base, which is really exciting. But for me, what I really took away from the lessons were really about our product vision. When we focused and built that one product vision for the one-stop shop for internal communication, it opened us up to a lot of different directions and ways that we could go. And our poor product managers had a lot of different opinions and options that they could go, which doesn't always help, but at least there's some frame of mind. And the big thing is all those different ideas weren't bad ideas. And I mean, we know that like sales is seeing other competitors get, sales done and deals done because X, Y, and Z is doing something over here. And maybe customers want this little small thing that is, over there and tangential. But if they don't work towards your product vision and they're taking you away from it, say no. It is still very important. And when I think about what's happened at the company today, I really do think that if we went into some of the directions that we could have been pulled into, a strategic relationship like what happened here probably wouldn't have, because we would have entrenched upon things that maybe staff base did, or staff base would have entrenched upon us, and the hundreds of different variations of that. So the big thing I will say is focus on what you do best, what your company does best, and that's why one of the first things I said is, figure out what your company's UVP is. Why was your product built in the first place? And then focus on what you do best, and let competitors do what they do best, and even alternatives. I think the best quote that I heard last year was from Des Traynor. He did a little podcast. He said that most of the time the reason competitors hurt you is because of what they make you do to yourself. Or sorry, actually, I think it was his friend that said it to him, but like, so true, right? Like, that is one of the best things I heard last year, and it stuck through the whole way. And I think that your vision really can help you and guide you in that direction. So we're kind of coming to a close here. The last few things I wanted to talk about that I've just kind of seen and didn't really have a good place to kind of segue them into it, so I'll call them hot tips, is number one, I call out lean product discovery a lot, because product discovery at some companies I've been at have been, just paralysis by analysis, right? I've seen product discovery take, a couple of weeks, a week or two, it's a couple of sprints, all the way to years. And there has to be a better way to be able to be very lean about that. And one of the things I will say for product managers is I often still see PMs being asked to write, 15, 16-page business plans, or 30-page business requirement docs, or product requirement docs. And instead, I really think that we can get away with just doing a custom curated product canvas that works for you and your company and your stakeholders, and really get to the idea that if you know this idea well, that you should be able to write, the reasons why, the plan, the UVP for that idea or the product in about an hour's time, so that your stakeholders can take 10 minutes to read it and then move on with their day. I think the days of 15-page to 100-page business plans may be eroding. Maybe not for everybody, but I think for a lot of us, it could be true. And then the second tip I'll call out is that build a life cycle. And what I mean by that is, build a life cycle that showcases exactly how much time and what activities you want to try and go through as a PM. You're probably not going to go through all these different things for every idea, but at least building some trust through the transparency of showcasing that here's what our process is and here's what we're trying to do. It can go a long way. And the last 2 or 3 companies that I've done this with, it's probably been one of the most effective things at the start, so that people can start focusing on discovery rather than delivery. And it doesn't take too much time. It really starts to get people talking about it. So that's really kind of a lot of the things I wanted to talk about here today. I'll just do a little spiel, one last spiel for us, the Banana Tag. We are growing, and now that we're part of Staff Base, we're going to continue to grow. So check out our website for any careers and job postings that might be there. And thanks a lot. I'm going to leave some time. I think we do have 15 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, the first question is, people want to know what the name of your dog is.
The name of my dog, yeah, it's Choto, Chotl, like photo but Choto, which means small in my my native tongue. I speak Bengali, or my parents speak Bengali, so yeah. That was funny. There's a delivery man, and I've got like a Ring doorbell, so it went off, and then he goes haywire. So
yeah, that's classic. That's perfect. Grace asked, what advice would you have for product managers at any level who find the founders aren't willing to shift course based on user interviews, UX research, product team guidance? I know what my answer is for this.
It's a tough answer, right? We've been there, and Grace, I empathize. I've been there, and it's difficult. I've gone through some companies where we've spent millions upon millions of dollars having that evidence at hand. Knowing kind of the answers that we thought would be there, and we've spent too much money, and that's not successful. It's a real waste of energy, resource, and time. And so sometimes you have to stick to your guns, but I think really pleading, really not just plead, like I'm not talking about groveling or anything, but really building a case, right? Taking some time, going the extra mile to kind of showcase and give some evidence, maybe bring some customers in front, not really as an intervention, but just as the forefront of here's our customers, this is what they're saying, this is where you want to go, as much as possible, building some evidence to it. And at that point, sometimes I think it's important to let things play out for a little bit, because your founders have been successful probably to date, and sometimes they may have this idea that they can't communicate always. So letting it go on for a little bit is good. But if you aren't seeing the change and you're still seeing kind of the behavior of like, we're not learning from our mistakes, there's some answers that you may have to think about in the mirror of whether or not that's the right place to be. Stuart, I'd love to know your answer, actually.
Mine was going to be shorter. Quit, find a new job.
Yeah.
Sometimes the frustration is not worth it, but you're probably showing more patience there than I would, so good for you. That one last question. We might get turfed out of here like at a hard stop at 11:20, so but we'll do our best. Last one from Scott. Getting product vision can be really challenging, especially when the founder doesn't have the clarity or can't effectively communicate it. What approaches have you used to extract the vision when building blocks and inputs aren't really there? So there's probably made more in your first 90 days. How do you get that insight and vision out of the founders to get started?
Yeah, there's a couple of things actually. What I have seen is that, if you have a founder or a set of, folks that aren't, let's say, can't communicate well, hopefully they may know that, like that might be something they know about themselves, and maybe that's something you're good at. Hopefully as a PM, obviously communication is really key, and ask to be leveraged, right? Ask to be kind of used as the voice and kind of have those deeper conversations so you can be the voice of the product and what the founders are trying to be. In terms of tooling, I think calling out that you need some kind of evidence and that we need to spend a little bit of money to make sure that, spending a little bit of upfront cash here is going to save you a lot of money down the road. There's just too many examples and too many case studies out there of how companies have failed because they're building the wrong thing. And as I tell, most of the PMs at Banana Tag, if we're building something to learn if we should have built it in the first place, we've gone wrong. Things have gone awry. So probably not the best, strategic tactical answer to it, but it's just one of those things that you have to go through. It is a great opportunity to be kind of, shown as that voice though. So there is that.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're out of time. Thank you for that today. And I understand you're going to stick around, so you'll be online. Yeah. So if people have more questions, they can connect with you and chat and
for sure.
All the great stuff. Super. Thank you, Partho. That was
Thank
great.
you. All righty.
Okay. I think we're bouncing to the lobby here. Thank you.
Thank you.